Anatolia, the crossroads of the world. For thousands of years, this land has been where East meets West, a place where empires rose and fell, armies marched, and ideas traveled. Hittites, Greeks, Romans, Byzantines, Ottomans all left their mark here. And from the ashes of one of the greatest empires in history, a modern nation was born. This is the story of how Turkey happened. To understand Turkey, we need to go back, way back. The land we call Turkey today was once the heart of empires. The Hittites ruled it in the Bronze Age. Later, it became part of ancient Greece. Troy, after all, was here. Then came Alexander the Great, then Rome. By the Middle Ages, it was the Byzantine Empire, with Constantinople, modern-day Istanbul, as its glittering capital. Constantinople was legendary, the queen of cities, filled with churches, palaces, and treasures. Protected by massive walls, it stood for over 1,000 years. But in 1453, the walls finally fell. The Ottomans, led by a young sultan named Mehmed II, stormed the city. Cannons blasted the defenses, and Constantinople became Istanbul. The Byzantine Empire was gone. The Ottoman Empire had arrived. For centuries, the Ottomans were unstoppable. From their capital in Istanbul, they ruled lands stretching from Hungary to Arabia, from North Africa to the Caucasus. Their armies terrified Europe. Their culture blended Islamic, Persian, and Byzantine influences into something unique. The empire was a superpower. At its height under Suleiman the Magnificent in the 16th century, the Ottomans dominated trade, politics, and war. They built grand mosques, codified laws, and sponsored art and science. For Europeans, the Ottomans were both admired and feared, exotic and dangerous, refined and ruthless. But empires rise, and empires fall. By the 18th and 19th centuries, the Ottoman Empire was in decline. Corruption, wars, and revolts weakened it. European powers called it the sick man of Europe. Territories broke away. Greece won independence, the Balkans rebelled, and nationalist movements spread like wildfire. The Ottomans tried to reform, they modernized their army, built railways, introduced new laws. But the empire was crumbling faster than it could be patched together. And then came World War I. The Ottomans sided with Germany. It was a gamble, and it didn't pay off. Allied forces invaded, battles raged, and the empire bled. In 1915, the Gallipoli campaign became legendary. Ottoman troops, led by a young officer named Mustafa Kemal, held off a massive Allied invasion. It was a rare victory in a war otherwise filled with defeat. By 1918, the Ottomans had lost. The empire was dismantled. Istanbul was occupied by Allied troops. Plans were drawn to carve up Ottoman lands among Britain, France, Greece, and Italy. For many, it seemed Turkey itself would disappear. But one man refused to accept that. Mustafa Kemal, later known as Atatürk, father of the Turks, launched a resistance movement. From the city of Ankara, he organized an army and rallied the people. Between 1919 and 1922, Turkish forces fought a war of independence against occupying powers and their allies. Against all odds, they won. The Treaty of Lausanne in 1923 recognized a new nation, the Republic of Turkey. The Ottoman Empire was dead. A modern secular nation was born. Atatürk became its first president, and he wasted no time reshaping the country. Atatürk's reforms were radical. He abolished the Sultanate and the Caliphate, centuries-old institutions that had defined Islamic rule. He introduced secular laws, replaced Islamic courts, and banned religious symbols in government. The fez, a traditional Ottoman hat, was outlawed. Western-style clothing was encouraged. Women were granted rights. The Arabic script was replaced with the Latin alphabet, making Turkish easier to learn and bringing literacy rates up. It was social engineering on a massive scale. Atatürk wanted to pull Turkey out of its Ottoman past and thrust it into the modern world. Not everyone liked it. Conservatives resisted. Religious leaders fumed. Traditionalists complained. But Atatürk was determined. His vision was a secular, modern, nationalist Turkey, and he pushed it through with charisma, political skill, and, when needed, force. When he died in 1938, Turkey was unrecognizable compared to the empire it had replaced. A nation of peasants and sultans had become a republic of citizens. The decades after Atatürk were turbulent. Turkey tried to balance democracy with stability. Elections were introduced, but military coups became common. The army saw itself as the guardian of Atatürk's legacy, stepping in whenever it felt politicians strayed from secularism or order. In 1952, Turkey joined NATO, cementing its place in the Western Alliance. During the Cold War, it was a frontline state against the Soviet Union, controlling the vital Bosporus Straits. American bases were built, Turkish soldiers fought in Korea, and the country became a key ally. But at home, things weren't always smooth. Coups in 1960, 1971, and 1980 toppled governments. Violence between leftists and right-wing groups scarred the 1970s. The Kurdish question, demands for autonomy and recognition by Turkey's Kurdish minority. became a long-running conflict with clashes and insurgencies. Still, democracy kept bouncing back. Unlike many countries where coups destroyed democratic systems entirely, Turkey managed to return to elections after each upheaval. By the late 20th century, Turkey's economy was growing, cities were modernizing, and its culture was blending east and west like nowhere else. Istanbul became a global city again, with skyscrapers rising alongside ancient mosques. In 2002, a new political force emerged, the Justice and Development Party (AKP), led by Recep Tayyip Erdoğan. At first, Erdoğan promised reform, economic growth, and EU membership, and for a while, it worked. The economy boomed, living standards rose, and Turkey seemed like a model of democracy in the Muslim world. But over time, Erdoğan consolidated power. Critics accused him of rolling back Atatürk's secular legacy, curbing press freedom, and using religion as a political tool. In 2016, a failed coup attempt shook the country. Erdoğan responded with a massive crackdown, purging tens of thousands from the military, government, and universities. Today, Erdoğan remains Turkey's dominant figure. 2 supporters: he restored Turkey's pride and global influence. 2 critics: he's an authoritarian who weakened democracy. And that's Turkey, a country of contradictions. It's secular but deeply religious. European but also Middle Eastern. Modern but tied to ancient traditions. It's a NATO ally that also buys weapons from Russia. A democracy that struggles with authoritarian tendencies. A bridge between worlds and sometimes a battleground between them. Its geography ensures it will always matter, sitting between Europe and Asia, controlling access to the Black Sea, bordering Syria, Iraq, and Iran. Turkey can't help but be at the center of global politics. Culturally, it's just as rich. Turkish coffee, kebabs, carpets, music, films, its influence reaches far beyond its borders. Turkish soap operas are watched from Latin America to Central Asia. Its cuisine is beloved worldwide. Its cities blend mosques and malls, bazaars and business towers. Economically, Turkey is a rising power, though challenged by inflation, debt, and political instability. Its people are young, ambitious, and proud. Its history is long, bloody, and brilliant. So how did Turkey happen? It happened because the Ottomans built an empire, and Atatürk built a nation. It happened because soldiers defended Gallipoli and revolutionaries fought for independence. It happened because Turkey has always been too important to disappear, too strategic to ignore, and too stubborn to give up. Turkey is not just kebab, it is also cannons at Constantinople, reforms in Ankara, coups in Istanbul, and debates that still rage about identity, religion, and democracy. A nation forever balancing between East and West, past and future, faith and freedom. But hey, at least the food is fantastic. The coffee will keep you awake through any coup. And if history has taught us anything, Turkey always finds a way to reinvent itself. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you want more stories about how nations happen and why their past still shapes their present.